The room was buzzing with reporters, cameras clicking non-stop, and microphones jostling for position. It was supposed to be an ordinary press conference, just another day in the life of Muhammad Ali, the legendary boxer who had already conquered the ring and captured the world's attention. But today, something felt different. An edge of tension hung in the air. At the front of the room, Ali stood tall, calm, and confident. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, but there was an undeniable aura about him. You could feel the weight of his presence even before he spoke. People whispered to each other, trying to capture his attention, hoping to get a reaction, a quote, anything. They didn't yet realize that today, Ali wouldn't just be answering questions. He would be delivering a lesson in humility and respect. Then, it happened. A reporter, eager to make a name for himself, decided to provoke the icon. He leaned forward, smirking, and asked a question dripping with mockery. It wasn't just curiosity, it was meant to embarrass, to make Ali look small in front of the cameras and the crowd. The laughter that followed from a few reporters made it clear. They thought this would be Ali's downfall. But Ali didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even frown. Instead, he looked at the reporter calmly, his eyes steady and unshaken, as if seeing through the ego behind the words. The room's laughter slowly faded, replaced by a tense silence. Every reporter, every cameraman, and every spectator felt it, a quiet power radiating from a man who didn't need to shout to command attention. Ali's reply, when it came, was gentle, almost understated. Yet it cut deeper than any insult could. The words weren't harsh. They were precise, full of wisdom, and delivered with such calm authority that the reporter's smug expression faltered. People leaned forward, waiting, captivated. Phones raised, recording not just a response, but a moment, a demonstration of true composure under pressure. In those few seconds, the lesson was clear. Strength isn't just about fists or fame. It's about character. It's about staying grounded, even when someone tries to tear you down. And in that quiet, powerful moment, Muhammad Ali reminded everyone, sometimes the greatest victory isn't in the ring, but in the way you handle the world outside of it. It was a busy morning, and the press conference room was alive with movement. Cameras clicked continuously, reporters jostled for position, and the murmur of conversations echoed off the walls. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of paper and polished wood. Everyone was here for one reason. Muhammad Ali, the man who had become more than a boxer, a living legend whose name inspired awe and curiosity worldwide. At the front of the room, Ali entered quietly. There was no entourage, no dramatic entrance, no flashing lights to announce him, just a man in a simple shirt and slacks, moving with effortless confidence. Yet, the energy in the room shifted the moment he walked in. Cameras turned, whispers grew louder, and even the bustling reporters seemed to pause for a fraction of a second. This wasn't arrogance, it was presence. A presence that demanded attention without asking for it. In the corner, the usual scene unfolded. Some reporters leaned on tables, pens poised above notepads. Others adjusted microphones, preparing to catch every word. Some tried to appear casual, whispering jokes to colleagues, hoping Ali wouldn't notice. But Ali noticed everything. His eyes, calm yet sharp, scanned the room. There was a mix of excitement, fear, and curiosity in the faces before him, a mix that made him smile faintly. Then, the inevitable happened. A reporter, eager to stand out, decided to provoke Ali. He leaned forward, his smirk barely contained, and asked a question meant to belittle. The words dripped with sarcasm, aimed to embarrass. He expected laughter, expected Ali to falter, expected a moment of weakness. A few reporters chuckled behind their hands, thinking the situation was already under control. They didn't know Muhammad Ali. Ali paused, letting the words hang in the air. He didn't rush. He didn't react with anger or defensiveness. His calmness was disarming, almost magnetic. In that moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Every whisper died down. Every click of a camera seemed louder. Even the smirking reporter felt a slight unease. There was power in Ali's silence, a power that wasn't loud or aggressive but impossible to ignore. Then Ali spoke, softly, yet with perfect clarity. His words weren't an insult. They weren't a sharp jab meant to humiliate. Instead, they were precise, firm, and wise. Every syllable carried authority, The kind that only comes from someone who knows themselves and doesn't need validation from others. The tone was gentle, almost unexpected, but it hit harder than any shout or confrontation could. As Ollie answered, the room leaned in. Reporters scribbled notes furiously, some unsure if they were witnessing a newsworthy moment or a life lesson in real time. Others raised their phones, recording not just his answer, but the way he carried himself, calm, confident, unshakable. People whispered to each other, exchanging looks that said, "Did you see that? Did you really just see that?" Even the mocking reporter's smirk faltered. He had expected Ollie to rise to the bait, to snap, or at least react in some human defensive way. Instead, Ali's composure made the reporter feel small, not because Ollie said anything cruel, but because he didn't. There was a quiet lesson in that silence. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned. Strength isn't shown through loud words, it's shown through restraint. By the time the question ended, the atmosphere had completely shifted. The room was no longer buzzing with casual chatter. It was focused, almost reverent. Everyone realized that this wasn't just a press conference. It was a demonstration of character. A lesson in humility. A reminder that true power doesn't shout, it listens, observes, and responds with thoughtfulness. And in that room, on that ordinary busy morning, Muhammad Ali reminded everyone why he wasn't just a champion in the ring. He was a champion in life. The room was dead silent for a moment after Ali's gentle reply. The reporter, who had expected laughter or applause at his jab, blinked, completely unprepared for the calm, quiet authority Ali displayed. His smirk faded, replaced with a mixture of confusion and something like respect, though he would never admit it out loud. Ali didn't raise his voice, he didn't wave his hands dramatically, and he didn't make a single sarcastic remark. Instead, he let his presence do the talking. There was a power in stillness, a strength in patience, that few in the room had ever witnessed. It was almost uncomfortable, not because Ali was threatening, but because he held the room in check without needing to. Other reporters looked on, pens frozen mid-scribble. Cameras were still rolling, but the flashes seemed muted compared to the intensity in the room. Even the janitor, leaning against a corner with a mop, stopped what he was doing to watch Ali. The energy was shifting. The mocking, playful atmosphere had disappeared, replaced with a quiet reverence. Then the reporter spoke again, trying to regain control. His voice, which had been confident moments ago, now had a hint of hesitation. Are you saying that I'm wrong?" he asked, clearly attempting to assert authority where he had none. Ali looked at him calmly, his eyes steady, and said, "I'm saying that sometimes arrogance blinds the eyes that should see. It makes people speak before they think, and judge before they understand." The words were soft, measured, yet they carried a weight that echoed through the room. Every person there could feel it, a lesson in humility delivered without hostility. The smirk had vanished entirely from the reporter's face. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but Ali didn't give him the chance. He didn't need to. His presence alone had said more than words ever could. Ali's calmness didn't just silence the mocking reporter, it challenged everyone present to reflect. The journalists who had whispered and laughed earlier shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some scribbled notes faster, not to cover Ali's words, but to capture the lesson in his demeanor. Others raised their phones, recording, knowing instinctively that this moment was special. More than news, more than gossip, more than entertainment. It was history in the making. Even the reporter who had tried to embarrass him couldn't hide the impact. Sweat formed at his hairline as he realized the situation had completely flipped. The attention wasn't on his question anymore. It was on Ali's response, on the calm, steady power that had completely disarmed the room. He had expected to dominate, but he had underestimated the man standing quietly in front of him. Ali paused for a moment, letting the silence sink in. Then he leaned slightly forward and smiled faintly. "True strength," he said, "isn't in the noise you make or the attention you demand. It's in the control you have over yourself, even when others try to pull you down. True courage is responding with patience, not anger." The simplicity of the words made them hit harder. The room's energy had shifted completely. Gone was the mocking tone, replaced with admiration, awe, and even a touch of fear. The reporter swallowed hard, realizing that he had just been taught a lesson he wouldn't forget. And not just him, everyone in that room knew they were witnessing the power of humility and the weight of true respect. At this point, the camera phones were out in full force. Everyone wanted to capture the moment. Some whispered to each other, "This is incredible." He didn't even yell, and look at everyone, quiet, attentive. No one dares to interrupt him. Then Ali did something remarkable. He didn't linger. He didn't need applause or validation. He simply nodded politely, as if concluding a conversation that had already ended, and prepared to move on. The gesture was subtle, almost unnoticeable, yet it was enough to leave everyone stunned. Before he stepped away, Ali looked directly at the reporter who had tried to mock him. There was no anger, no contempt, only a calm, steady gaze that seemed to see the man's intentions and flaws clearly. "Remember," Ali said softly, "respect isn't earned by stepping on others. It's earned by how you treat them, especially when you think no one is watching." The reporter nodded, speechless, and Ali turned, walking slowly toward the exit. His footsteps were measured, deliberate, and every step seemed to command the room without a single loud word. People whispered to one another, unsure whether to cheer, clap, or simply sit in awe. Cameras continued clicking, phones continued recording, but nothing could break the stillness Ali left behind. If you're amazed by Ali's calmness and strength under pressure, smash that like button, thumbs up, drop a comment below telling us your favorite part, and subscribe bell for more legendary stories like this. That day, Ali didn't just answer a question. He rewrote the rules of confrontation. He proved that patience can be stronger than aggression, humility can silence arrogance, and respect can command attention without demanding it. The lesson wasn't just for the reporter, it was for everyone in that room, and for anyone watching this story unfold online. Ali left the press conference as quietly as he had arrived, but the impact of his gentle reply echoed louder than any shout could have. And for the people who had tried to mock him, that silence was more than a lesson, it was a wake-up call. If you're amazed by Ali's calmness, hit like, thumbs up, comment your thoughts, and The room remained silent long after Muhammad Ali had delivered his gentle, yet powerful words. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from boredom or inattentiveness. It was a charged, almost electric stillness that filled every corner of the press conference room. Cameras clicked quietly, trying not to disrupt the moment, while reporters exchanged glances that said everything without a single word. For the first time that morning, everyone seemed to realize that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The reporter who had tried to mock Ali sat frozen, fingers gripping his pen so tightly it creased the paper. His smirk was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar, respect tinged with shock. The words Ali had spoken didn't sting like an insult. Instead, they struck deeper, hitting a nerve that no one in the room wanted to admit existed. He realized that he had not just been silenced, he had been outclassed. Not through force or anger, but through calm, deliberate wisdom. Across the room, junior reporters who had giggled at the initial joke now scribbled feverishly in their notebooks, trying to capture not just Ali's words, but the way he had spoken them. The subtle tone, the patient pauses, the slight smile, every nuance mattered. It was clear that this was more than a press conference. It was a lesson in poise and self-respect, delivered live, unedited, and unforgettable. Even the cameramen, who were used to capturing fights and dramatic moments, lowered their lenses slightly, as if realizing that they didn't need to focus their cameras to understand the gravity of what they were seeing. Ali's presence alone told the story, a story of strength, humility, and dignity that transcended the triviality of the mocking question. Some of the older journalists whispered among themselves, nodding knowingly. They had seen legends before, but very few had the ability to silence a room without raising their voice. Ali's calmness had created a ripple effect, spreading throughout the room like a quiet wave of realization. It wasn't fear, exactly, but a profound acknowledgement that they were in the presence of greatness, and greatness wasn't loud or boastful, it was patient, controlled, and unwavering. Meanwhile, younger reporters who had never encountered someone of Ali's stature stared wide-eyed. They couldn't quite process how a single man could command such respect through mere composure. They had watched interviews before where athletes defended themselves angrily, yelled over journalists, or snapped under pressure. But this was different. Ali didn't need to raise his voice. The room had already given him its attention willingly. Even outside the press conference room, news assistants and security personnel who had initially thought it would be just another morning slowly realized that something significant had happened. Some exchanged murmured comments. "Did you hear him? Did you see how calm he was?" Others shook their heads in disbelief. "That man, he's something else." In one corner, A young intern peeked nervously at the notes she had been tasked with taking. She had expected to write a story about a scandal or controversy, maybe a funny quote or a heated exchange. Instead, she found herself scribbling words like respect, humility, and strength in silence. She realized that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about conflict, they're about the quiet victories that happen in plain sight. Meanwhile, the reporter who had mocked Ollie finally found his voice, but it was small, hesitant. I didn't expect that, he muttered under his breath, mostly to himself. He glanced at his colleagues, who were either avoiding eye contact or silently nodding in agreement. No one laughed. No one sneered. Everyone understood that this moment had shifted the balance entirely. Ollie, noticing the reactions but not dwelling on them, adjusted his stance slightly and offered a small nod. It was a subtle gesture, almost invisible, yet it carried immense weight. The gesture seemed to acknowledge that he had heard everyone, understood the tension, and yet remained entirely above it all. He had said what needed to be said, and the room had absorbed it, consciously or not. Phones were out, recording the scene from every angle. Some reporters whispered to each other about how this would go viral, but they also knew it wasn't the flash of the camera that mattered, it was the lesson behind it. The story wasn't just about Muhammad Ali answering a question. It was about the kind of person who could command respect without demanding it, who could turn arrogance into reflection, and who could make an entire room rethink its behavior simply by being himself. The atmosphere in the room had completely transformed. What had started as a mocking attempt to embarrass Ali had become a demonstration of his character and leadership. The young intern, the veteran journalists, the cameraman, even the security guards, all were silently acknowledging that they had just witnessed a masterclass in composure. And as Ali began to walk toward the exit, the room remained in a suspended state of awe. Nobody spoke, nobody moved quickly. Even the mocking reporter, now humbled, looked after Ali with a mixture of shame and admiration. He had underestimated the man in front of him, not the athlete, not the celebrity, but the human being who commanded respect through calmness and dignity alone. This reaction, this profound shift in energy, would stay with everyone present long after the press conference ended. Phones would share the moment. Notes would capture it. And people would retell the story over and over again, not just for the words Ali had said, but for the atmosphere he had created, the undeniable, almost sacred power of humility, patience, and quiet strength. If you're inspired by Ali's calm strength and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like, thumbs up, comment your thoughts, and subscribe bell for more legendary moments. The silence that followed Muhammad Ali's calm, disarming words lingered like a heavy fog in the room. Reporters were still digesting what had just happened, whispering to one another in hushed tones, phones still recording, pens still moving, trying to capture every nuance. Some couldn't believe what they had seen. A moment that started as mockery had ended with Ali completely in control, commanding respect without raising his voice. Just as the room began to settle, an unexpected sound broke the tension. The front doors of the press conference room swung open, and a group of well-dressed executives hurried in. Their faces were serious, their steps purposeful, carrying briefcases and folders filled with documents that seemed important, urgent. The sudden energy shift was palpable. It was as if the room had been holding its collective breath, and now a new, dramatic turn was about to unfold. "Mr. Ali," one of the executives called out, slightly out of breath. "We've been waiting for you, sir." Ali paused mid-step, glancing toward them with his signature calm, almost amused smile. The journalist's curiosity spiked immediately. Who were these people, and what urgency could bring them to a press conference in the middle of Ali's response? The executive approached Ali, a mix of nervousness and respect on his face. "Sir, you may not realize it yet, but you now hold a significant position with us. You are officially the majority stakeholder in this organization." The room collectively gasped. Cameras clicked frantically, reporters whispered frantically among themselves, and the intern who had been taking diligent notes nearly dropped her notebook. Ali, the man who had just demonstrated patience, humility, and control, was now at the center of an even bigger revelation, one that no one had expected. The reporter who had attempted to mock Ali earlier froze completely. His face drained of color. Wait. Are you serious? You mean, he's in charge here?" His voice trembled, betraying the disbelief and shock he could no longer hide. Ali nodded calmly, acknowledging the announcement with a quiet grace. "Yes," he said simply. Sometimes, you don't realize the influence you hold until you step into a space thinking you're just one more person. And sometimes, those you underestimate turn out to be the ones shaping your world. The reporters leaned forward, phones raised high, realizing that this story had just transformed from a press conference to a full-blown revelation. It wasn't just about Ali's legendary calmness or the reporter's embarrassment anymore. It was about power, humility, and the surprising ways life teaches lessons. "Sir, we've prepared all the necessary documentation," another executive explained, handing Ali a folder. "With this, you now officially have the authority to make decisions, change leadership, and influence the direction of this institution." The reporter who had tried to mock Ali stammered. His hands shook slightly as he dropped his pen. I can't believe this. The man I mocked. He owns the place." Ali's eyes met the reporter's, calm and unwavering. There was no anger, no vindictiveness, just a steady, gentle lesson in humility. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, sometimes even when no one knows your true position. Today's lesson is that arrogance blinds the eyes more than ignorance ever could. The room was buzzing now, reporters whispering, cameras clicking non-stop, and people trying to record every single moment. Ali's quiet confidence had been amplified by the revelation. He had not only responded with grace under insult, but had also revealed a side no one could have predicted. His influence extended far beyond the ring, far beyond the press conference. The reporter who had mocked him was now speechless, sitting back in his chair, feeling the weight of his misjudgment. He had learned something in the harshest, most humbling way possible, a lesson that would stick with him forever. Ali opened the folder briefly, glanced over the documents, then looked around at the room full of astonished faces. "Leadership isn't about showing dominance or proving others wrong," he said softly. "It's about listening, understanding, and guiding with integrity. Sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the loudest lesson." The young intern whispered to her colleague, This is unbelievable. It started with a question meant to embarrass him, and now he's running the whole organization." Ali handed the documents back to the executives and smiled. "Now, let's focus on what really matters: respect, humility, and how we treat others, regardless of who they are or what they can do for us." For those watching online or hearing about the story later, this moment was unforgettable. It wasn't just about Ali's calm response or the shocking revelation of power. It was a lesson in character, a reminder that true strength isn't measured by anger, wealth, or influence. It's measured by patience, grace, and the ability to stay composed when others doubt or disrespect you. If this story inspired you as much as it inspired everyone in that room, don't forget to like, thumbs up, comment below what you would do in the reporter's shoes, and subscribe bell to follow more legendary moments like this. And as Ali quietly walked out, the room buzzed with the realization. The man they had tried to mock was not just a champion in the ring. He was a master of life, humility, and influence. His gentle reply had left everyone speechless, but his presence and actions had left an impact that would last far longer than any headline. White Heavy Checkmark Part 5 is now complete, fully cinematic, dramatic, and with. Comment below what you think, like, thumbs up, and subscribe bell so you don't miss stories like. The room remained in stunned silence even as Muhammad Ali began to walk toward the exit. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered, and even the executives who had delivered the shocking news found themselves pausing to absorb the magnitude of the moment. It wasn't just the revelation of Ali's authority or ownership that held the room spellbound. It was the calmness, the dignity, and the quiet power with which he carried himself through it all. The reporter who had mocked him earlier was still seated, eyes wide and voice trembling. I can't believe this," he stammered. "The man I tried to embarrass. He's in charge?" His colleagues exchanged knowing glances, but no one dared correct him. Everyone understood. Today was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Ali stopped just short of the door and turned to face the room one last time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't gesture dramatically. Instead, he spoke with gentle authority, a quiet reminder of everything he had already taught. "Respect isn't about knowing who has power or wealth," Ali said softly, scanning the room with calm, steady eyes. "It's about how you treat people, especially when you think no one important is watching. Every interaction is a chance to show humility, kindness, and integrity. Remember that." The reporter swallowed hard, shame washing over him as he realized the depth of his misjudgment. He had approached Ali thinking he could assert dominance, thinking he could make the legend stumble. Instead, he had been humbled without a single harsh word. The weight of his mistake pressed down, and he realized that true respect wasn't something to demand, it was something to earn, quietly and consistently. Ali then shifted his gaze to the room's veteran clerk, a man who had stayed composed and respectful throughout the ordeal while others had whispered, laughed, or mocked. The clerk's eyes widened as Ali smiled faintly at him. "From today," Ali said, "you will take on more responsibility. Leadership isn't about being loud or harsh, it's about integrity, fairness, and listening when others won't. I trust you to carry this forward." The clerk, nearly trembling with disbelief, nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Ali's smile deepened, quiet but filled with warmth. There was no showmanship, no theatrics, just recognition for someone who had displayed the very traits Ali valued most: respect, patience, and humility. The contrast between him and the reporter who had mocked him earlier was stark, a living demonstration of the lesson Ali had been teaching all along. Turning once more to the entire room, Ali spoke softly, yet every word resonated as if carried on the air itself. True power is silent. True strength is not in boasting or belittling others. It is in patience, in kindness, and in how you respond to disrespect. You can face arrogance without anger, insult without retaliation, and still leave a lasting impact. The reporters, cameras, and executives listened intently. Some took frantic notes. Others whispered excitedly to their colleagues. Even those who had tried to laugh or mock earlier were silent, realizing that the lesson had been delivered not with force, but with grace. Ali then turned and walked toward the exit, each step deliberate, composed, and unhurried. The room seemed to hold its breath, unwilling to let the moment end too soon. The sound of his footsteps echoed softly, yet carried the weight of decades of experience, wisdom, and quiet authority. As the doors closed behind him, the energy in the room shifted again. The reporter who had mocked him sat slumped in his chair, a mixture of embarrassment and awe on his face. The young interns and journalists who had been recording furiously now whispered to one another, repeating phrases like incredible and unbelievable. Even the executives glanced at each other, nodding silently, acknowledging that this had been more than a press conference. It had been a lesson in leadership, humility, and the quiet power of integrity. For viewers watching online or hearing the story later, the lesson was clear. Ali had proven that you don't need anger, force, or wealth to command respect. Sometimes the simplest, quietest gestures, a calm response, a patient smile, a measured word, can leave the deepest impact. And before the scene faded completely, a final thought echoed: respect isn't something you reserve for those who seem powerful or impressive. It is something you extend to everyone, at all times, because one day, the person you underestimate might be the one who changes everything. If you've been inspired by Muhammad Ali's calm strength, his humility, and his quiet power, smash that like thumbs up, drop a comment below telling us your favorite lesson, and subscribe bell for more legendary stories like this. As the room emptied, the lesson lingered long after the cameras were packed away and the microphones powered down. Muhammad Ali had left without fanfare, yet his presence, his words, and his example would resonate for decades. He had shown that the most unforgettable victories aren't always won in the ring. Sometimes, they are won through patience, grace, and respect, leaving a legacy that cannot be erased. If you believe humility is true strength, type respect in the comments, like thumbs. The press conference room was quiet now, but the echoes of Muhammad Ali's calm, commanding presence lingered in every corner. Reporters, interns, clerks, and executives had all been witnesses to a lesson far greater than any headline could capture. They had seen something that could not be measured in wealth, fame, or even athletic skill. They had seen character. They had seen respect. They had seen the kind of quiet strength that doesn't announce itself but leaves a mark on everyone who encounters it. Muhammad Ali had entered that room like any other man. No entourage, no flashy display of status, no announcement to demand attention. Yet by the time he left, he had commanded a level of respect that could not be fabricated. The lesson was clear: true power is silent, and true influence is earned, not demanded. It didn't matter that the reporter had tried to mock him, or that some people had whispered and laughed at first. Ali's response had been gentle, calm, and deliberate. He hadn't insulted anyone back. He hadn't raised his voice. He had simply demonstrated a principle: Patience and composure can silence arrogance far more effectively than anger ever could. The room, once filled with noise and mockery, had transformed into one of quiet reflection. The moral of this story is simple, yet profound. Respect isn't something you give only to those you think are important. It's something you show to everyone, at all times, even when you feel it's inconvenient or when no one is watching. It's in the way you respond to insults, the way you treat people who cannot benefit you, and the way you carry yourself under pressure. Ali had shown that humility is not weakness, and kindness is not surrender. It is the mark of true strength. Even the reporter who had tried to mock him had learned this lesson firsthand. His arrogance had been met with calm wisdom, and in that moment, he understood something deeper than any headline or video clip could convey. Sometimes, the person you underestimate is the one who ends up teaching you the most important lesson of your life. Muhammad Ali's quiet exit from the room was more than just a physical departure. It was a demonstration of grace. He had left without fanfare, but his impact was immediate and lasting. Cameras recorded him walking away, phones captured his gestures, and reporters carried his words in their notes. But the most important part of the story wasn't in the recordings. It was in the change that had taken place in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed him. For the interns and young reporters in the room, this moment became a lesson they would carry with them forever. They had learned that strength is not about showing off, fame is not about status, and success is not about putting others down. Instead, true power lies in how you handle yourself when faced with disrespect, in how you treat those who can do nothing for you, and in the patience and humility you bring to every interaction. And for the rest of the audience watching this story online, the lesson is the same. Life will often present situations where you are underestimated, mocked, or challenged. How you respond in those moments defines you far more than any victory in the ring, any award, or any public recognition. Muhammad Ali's calm, gentle reply was not just a response. It was a demonstration of how to live a life of integrity, honor, and influence. So remember, respect everyone, not because of what they have, but because of who they are. Respond to arrogance with patience. Handle insults with dignity. Carry yourself with grace, even when others try to shake you. The world remembers actions more than words, and the way you treat others in quiet moments often speaks louder than any public gesture. If this story inspired you and reminded you of the true power of humility and respect, hit like thumbs up, comment below telling us what you learned, and subscribe bell to watch more legendary moments and life lessons from the greatest figures in history. Muhammad Ali left the room that day not as a man seeking attention, but as a teacher whose lessons would echo far beyond the walls of a press conference. His strength was not in his fists, nor in his fame, but in his calm mind, his steady presence, and his unwavering respect for others. That is the legacy he left, a reminder that true power is silent, true respect is earned, and the most lasting victories in life are won with patience, humility, and grace. So as you go about your day, remember Ali's example. Treat people kindly, stay composed under pressure, and never underestimate the power of quiet strength. You may never know whose life you might change with a single respectful word or a calm, thoughtful action. And finally, if you believe in the strength of humility and the power of respect, type respect in the comments, smash that like thumbs up button, and subscribe bell for more stories that inspire greatness in everyday life.